One of the things I talk about for a lot of people here who are discovering this content, I think you need to fight to find yourself. Here's what I mean by that. I have no idea, Henrik. It wasn't like, that was just DNA, right? Like I was 7. It's not like.
Was it you want to make money early?
It wasn't, you know what's funny, and this is a huge advantage this is why I think entrepreneurship's confusing right now. I think in the last 10, 15 years, entrepreneurs have become more relevant. Fame. This is crazy to me. I was 31 years old before I made a video. I grew up I was an adult before it even it didn't even cross my mind that humans would know who I was. I thought people would know me in the wine business, in the business world, sure, because I was in that. But the thought that on the walk here somebody might say hi or a selfie, businessmen weren't famous. That wasn't a thing. No, to me it was, and what I'm scared about is people are now chasing the money. People want to be entrepreneurs for the fame and the money. The problem is entrepreneurship's hard. It's really hard, and it's extremely lonely. You know, you're at the top of an organization and everything's your fault, and everything's your responsibility. It's like being a parent. It's all fun and games until you're a parent. You know, like everybody goes through this. They have all sorts of judgment of their parents until they become a parent. And they're like, wait a minute. Yeah. And so, anyway, no, going back, Henrik, I just have no idea. It was who I was. In the same way that I look at athletes, I look at musicians, I look at artists, teachers, stay-at-home parents. Like my mom was destined, genuinely, to be a stay-at-home mother and like raise a family, and like I'm the great beneficiary of that. I think a lot of people compromise their greatest skills because they don't think they can make money in it. I think about all my friends who were remarkable at video games when it wasn't clear that video games were a business. And so they thought they had to get a real job. But had they stayed and played video games, they might be the Tony Hawk of video games today, the way it played out. Sure. And so I think people need to chase passion and then live within the means of what that financial outcome is.
And I think sometimes it's like chasing passion doesn't mean you have a specific thing in mind, but it's a way of doing. And what I mean by that is like it could be wanting to be helpful.
Yeah.
Or wanting to solve problems.
Yeah.
And figuring out like that's my.
And to your point, I love solving problems. So that can mean, I love what you're saying. So that can mean, oh, you're destined to become an engineer.
Exactly.
Because engineers solve problems. Oh, you're destined to be a therapist. Because that solves problems. Oh, you're destined to be a guidance counselor in a middle school. Oh, you're destined to be an entrepreneur because you're going to create a product that solves a problem. I like that. I agree with that. I think what that does for people is it gives them a little bit more room to figure themselves out. 14 to 17, high school. Flirted, didn't understand it. The only thing I knew was, this is weird. I'm playing high school different than the other 250 kids in my class. I feel no peer pressure. I could give two shits if I'm picked on or don't have social status. I had a very outgoing and like kind of am who I am personality, so I was very liked, but I did something in the 90s in New Jersey. If you weren't picking on kids, you weren't popular. And I wasn't willing to compromise. I wasn't willing to go to the next tier of popularity because I wasn't willing to shit on kids in my class. And I would choose going to a baseball card show and selling on a Friday night instead of going to a cool party that I was invited to that I should have felt cool about. I was only 20% of the class invited. I would work at my dad's liquor store on the weekends instead of hanging out. I was so different. And I sensed it, but it was very hazy. About 20 years later, when I was 35, I'd been putting out content for long enough, telling people, starting in 2006, 7, 8, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, do this, do this, do this. This is how you get more followers. This is how you get more people to buy from you on email. And I was putting out all this content, and I started realizing a lot of people were not doing it. And I started getting fascinated on why. And that's when I had the early epiphanies of like, oh, the whole world is built on self-esteem. You're either confident or you're insecure. And then a million other variables of how that happens. And my content changed. The first 5 years of me being a businessman content, it's very tactical. Set up this website, post at this time, And then you can start to see after I started to get like, and I started reading the DMs and they're like, hey, but if I post, what if I don't like the way I look? And I'm like, whoa, right. Oh, like my husband doesn't think I should be doing this. I'm like, oh, right. Like, you know, and by the way, my childhood was not all roses. My mom was incredibly optimistic. My dad was incredibly pessimistic. You know, most of my relatives, including my mom's side, were pessimistic. They grew up in the Soviet Union. They always thought there was a conspiracy. You know, I get it. At the time, I didn't get it. I would judge my uncles, my grandmom. Like, I was like, why is everyone so negative? Like, now I'm like, wait a minute.
Right.
They lived in the worst place in the world at the time.
Well, mindset is a tool. We don't use mindset as a tool to deal with the great times. Like, whoever thinks, like, I gotta spend more time on my mindset when everything's going great. Mindset is a tool.
Well, real quick though,
Yeah.
real quick, I apologize. This is where gratitude and appreciation is the tool.
Right.
So like, think about how I started the opening of this podcast. It's on an everyday basis. This morning, while brushing my teeth and listening to Boomer talk about the Jets and the Rangers, I was like, man, good, all right, thank you. Yeah, it's a good, like real talk. And by the way, it's practice. One thing by the way, step 3, first I didn't understand, like I just said, then I started understanding. Now I'm going into a third phase where I'm trying to tell people, friends first, even like Dust, like I'm starting to realize, oh shit, I practice.
Yeah.
I say to myself, you are lucky. This is a great day. Like, you want to hear something insane that I would tell everyone, especially people of any level of status? I believe the single reason I am joyous is because I have no attachment to my professional and financial success. I feel like 0 of my identity is the Garyvee or the businessman. It is completely and utterly baked into my self-worth, is baked into how I feel people feel about me based on how much they know me. Yesterday, what you two thought about me was very low on a mattering to me. It is now grown after this hour, but Dustin, it matters a ton to me. He's been around me a ton. My sister, more so. It's just a pecking order. So I think for a lot of people, if somebody did something at a Jets game this weekend, they got introduced to me and they told me their full profession in the intro. Hey, John Thompson, doctor at this, like, and I'm like, you know, I take note, I think about that. I'm like, I see, that's his validation.
Sure.
And I think about it, like, you know, listen, we can't go through this podcast without talking about how handsome Henrik is, right? Like,
It's actually written into the.
Is it?
Yeah.
But it's funny, I'm gonna use it as something I talk a lot about. I worry that parents give validation to their children around grades, because it's a very fake system. I worry that parents give validation on looks. You know, if a child is told, and there's a small percentage of people like Henrik who are just born attractive, and it's going to be a constant theme in their life, and especially for young women. You know, you think about that, you know, then all of a sudden in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and your 60s, I am curious about how people validate themselves. Is it school? Is it money? Is it zip code? Is it the car you drive? Is it how you look? Is it what you accomplish on the ice? Is it accomplishing followers, like? I mean, it's a very big deal, and I think about it a lot. In my office, I talk about to employees, I just recently had some young man work for me, and he was doing a certain role, and I said, hey, you're an extrovert. You're not cross your T's and dot your I's. You're doing a cross your T's and dot your I's job now. You need to get out of this. And I said, look, my job as CEO is to put players in a position to succeed. Very hardcore sports analogy. The most fascinating thing I watch in sports is the variable of a head coach. Because it's, you know, especially within a season. Anytime a team in any of the 4 major sports fires a manager or head coach in season, even if I don't follow that team, I kind of keep a little eye on the next month of what that team does, because it speaks to the actual variable of that person, right? It is the same players. It's not the next season. You know, I think, you know, and you know this, Henrik, I think fans are naive. A team seemingly is the same as last year, but many things happen. Everybody's a year older, anything can happen. And by the way, one player, let alone 3 different players, changes everything, potentially. Especially if one of those 3 players is special. Or the reverse. You get rid of one cancerous, cynical player, changes the entire locker room. So in-season coaches coming is like one of my biggest fascinations. As a CEO, I stay up at night thinking about, is Dustin doing the single best thing he could be doing in this organization, both for the organization and for Dustin, right? Because if you do it for Dustin, then it will happen for the organization.
Do you view your companies from a sports standpoint almost? Do you see yourself as a coach?
Yes.
Or, more as a coach than as a boss?
100%. I see myself, first of all, I think that almost every CEO and boss has it wrong. It was funny when you even said the word of what happened in my stomach. It didn't feel good because I think the world has defined boss as person that tells you what to do, person that's keeping you accountable. I feel that I work for every employee and I really show up that way. And I feel like I have to dictate the strategy, right? So yes, I do think more of myself as a coach, as a parent, as a guidance counselor, as an older brother feels very appropriate. I am the oldest in my family, and I was in a family where it was an immigrant family. So my mom, from the time I was 6, I remember my mom saying, like, you have to take care of your sister. You're out there at 8 years old. You're 8. You're a child. You're a baby. 8. And I'm keeping an eye on her, and I gotta fight if somebody makes fun of her, like real shit. And so, yes, I do view it that way.